Hey everyone, I'm Army Gaming. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to another Make Your Own Pack event. For this event we have Metal, Light, and an epic monster. Now as for the epic monsters, none of them really stand out, they're not too amazing, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them. But as for the light monster and the metal monsters, we have some really great offers and it's going to be kind of hard to decide which monster are worth getting. So I'm going to do my best to give you guys the pros and cons, and then hopefully that can help you out to select a pack or at least an individual monster to purchase. And considering already one day has passed and there's a team wars just for metal, light, and epic, I'm really going to try to just speed this video along. So starting things off with Kimmel's Gift, this monster can best be classified as an attacker with a power of 2720 and skills like Spiky Anvil, which deals 70 damage, have an 18 stamina cost and no cooldown, or Grudge, 60 damage, 30 stamina cost, but it's a lifesteal skill. Really powerful monster. If you're in need of an epic attacker, Kimmel's Gift would be the way to go. Oh, and let's not forget Wrecking Ball, which is 85 damage, 21 stamina, and a 1 turn cooldown. Moving along, the next monster available is Horus. Now stats wise, Horus has some pretty amazing stats. In terms of power, this puts him in the top 20 or tied for the top 20. His life stat for epic monsters, he's tied for 5th place, and his speed stat, that makes him tied for 4th place. And as for skills, nothing really stands out, but he does have a skill called Funny Mushrooms, which is a single stun, and considering the epic monster is normally the monster that goes 3rd, sometimes you just need to immobilize. But once again, as for his other skills, nothing really stands out. And moving along, we have Pyrotech. So for Pyrotech, his stats are nothing too amazing. His life is actually on the rather low end for epic monsters. His speed is kind of good, it puts him in like 27th place. And that speed could actually be useful because you can potentially give this monster 3 speed runes and have him go before your metal attacker. And especially if your metal attacker has a 45 damage metal based AoE, you can start off with Pyrotech and use Bang Bang, which essentially just magnetizes all of the enemy monsters. And aside from being able to pull off that combo, check out this skill, Making It Great Again. May burn all targets gains 1 extra turn, so you can apply an AoE burning and an AoE magnetizing in the same turn with Pyrotech, so this is especially beneficial if you go before your metal attacker. That way, even if your metal attacker doesn't finish off all of the enemy monsters, they're going to be burned, and if they're burned, then they could potentially lose. So in any team wars involving metal, epic, and some other element, where the other element can be the denier and the metal monster is the attacker, Pyrotech may be the perfect monster to use. And I should mention that for an epic monster, he has some pretty powerful attacks, like Crackle Fury, which is a 50 fire-based AoE, and Pyromania, which is a 45 fire-based AoE that also applies burning. And as for the last epic monster, we have Gothel. In this monster, stats-wise, there's nothing too amazing except for his speed, 2980. In terms of just epic monsters, this makes him tied for 10th place. Skills-wise, however, there's nothing really too interesting except for this skill, Blinding Cluster. Deals moderate light damage, may blind target, and daze to entire enemy team. Now I'm not sure what this skill actually does. I'm not sure if it's a single blind plus an AoE daze, or if it's an AoE blind and daze, because if it is an AoE blind and daze, that's absolutely amazing, especially considering this monster has an incredible speed. If you're able to get this monster, potentially rank him up, he can rival some legendary monsters if you give this monster all speedruns. He can definitely rival the enemy attacker. So if you give this monster all speedrun and then use Blinding Cluster and the whole enemy team is blind and dazed, well, they're pretty much going to be missing, which means it's going to secure your chance of getting 3 coins. And even if this skill is just a single blind but an AoE daze, it's still really good because at least one of the enemy monsters is going to have negative 75% accuracy. So you just need to hit that blind and daze on the main threat, which is most likely going to be the enemy attacker. And it's honestly because of this skill alone that I think makes Gothel a really good epic monster. So once again, like I said at the beginning of the video, none of these epic monsters are really too amazing. I think they're significantly outclassed by other epic monsters such as Nautilus, Growler, Joppers, Ophiuchus, and the list goes on and on. But if you had to pick one of these monsters to create a pack, because essentially you're paying like 20 extra gems for an epic monster, which is a pretty good deal in my opinion, I think my number 1 recommendation would be Gothel. And after Gothel, I think I would recommend Pyrotech just to pull off that AoE magnetizing and AoE burning combo in 1 turn. But ultimately the choice is up to you. And with that out of the way, we can finally move on to light monsters. And let me just say that every single light monster being offered is a really good choice. So like I usually say, my number 1 advice is just to buy the monster you really want. Regardless of what any advice people can give you, if you really desperately want a monster, just go ahead and buy that monster. None of them are a bad choice. And with that being said, we start things off with Monkey. So in terms of stats, nothing really stands out about Monkey. His speed is 3421, which isn't even that Demise speed we're used to, 3465, but that doesn't even matter at the time because currently light monsters don't have a monster with an AoE deny. And typically the light monster you'll see on defense is the General Ingvar, who is extremely slow, so Monkey can easily outspeed him. And one really amazing thing about Monkey is that he has a skill called Rising Anger, which is a Mega Stun. He's one of the few monsters to have Mega Stun. And as many of you know, if a monster is immune to stun, that doesn't mean they're immune to Mega Stun. So if you're playing in Team Wars, you can easily mobilize an enemy monster for 2 turns. You can either mobilize the attacker if they're the main threat, or you can immobilize the Deny monster if they happen to have a Deny monster that isn't toughed or hardened. And to make things even better, he also has Magic Circle, which is a 100% damage reduction to target, so this obviously works against the enemy attacker. They can hit you with their absolute strongest attack, they can hit you with their ultimate, and it doesn't matter, it's going to be dealing no damage. This monster can also give your whole team stun immunity, which can come in handy in certain wars like Earth Wars. He can give your whole team immunity to Daze, which would probably be most useful against light monsters. Or scrolling back up to Mantra Focus, you can give your whole team increased accuracy, which means they won't be able to miss. And if you run this skill, you might want to consider running Spirit Control because it's an AoE slow, and if you give yourself increased accuracy and then use AoE slow, there's a greater chance it's actually going to land. So without a doubt, this is an extremely good monster. But moving on, we also have Demise. And I personally think that Demise is the best light monster in the whole entire game, especially for your average player. One of the most important things about this monster is that her speed is 3465, so she rivals that of many Deny monsters. And what in my opinion makes her the best light monster is the skill Strength from Beyond. This skill gives one of your monsters double damage and an immediate extra turn, which means after you use Strength from Beyond, whatever ally you choose, that monster gets an extra turn. So realistically, this monster makes it so you don't need a Deny monster. And this also allows you to run an attacker monster with all strength runes. You give that monster Strength from Beyond, they get an immediate extra turn, that attacker can use an AoE, wipe out all of the enemy team, or you can just use a single skill, wipe out the enemy Deny monster, and then when it's your attacker's turn again, it can wipe out the enemy attacker. And so this skill alone combined with Demise's amazing speed, it just makes her the absolute best monster to use, at least for your average player. And having Demise and using the combo of using all strength rune, this also makes it really easy to clear dungeons and win your player versus player matches. But aside from the skill, she also has other extremely amazing skills. The Light Within removes all debuffs from your team as well as gives them a damage boost. When Light Corrupts gives 2 negative effects to one of the enemy monsters, as well as it also removes positive effects from that one target. And the Celebration is an AoE that removes all positive effects from all of the enemy monsters, which is extremely good in Light Wars. Draining Light is an AoE that deals only 15 damage, which is extremely slow, but it gives your whole team life regeneration, and you also get a little life from that life steal. And if you want, you can also choose to run Shining Tackle, which is just a single blind skill. And thus, my number one recommendation for the light monster to purchase, it would have to be Demise. She's absolutely amazing, you can't go wrong with her. But anyways, I'm still going to talk about the other monsters, so moving on, we have Ogma. Now this monster is a fan favorite of many, and he really stands out for his skills. He specifically stands out because of Holy Shield and Divine Shield. Holy Shield applies a shield that gives immunity against water, metal, magic, and nature attacks for 2 full turns, and Divine Shield applies a shield that gives immunity to light, thunder, fire, and earth attacks for 2 turns, which means that in a team wars, using Ogma can be one of the best ways to secure 3 coins, especially when the rarity monster happens to be a common or an uncommon. And as a nice little bonus, it can be kind of hard to immobilize Ogma because he can give himself immunity to freeze with one of his skills, or immunity to possession with another skill. So Ogma is another monster you might want to consider purchasing. And anyways, the last monster available for sale is Laith. And if you're in need of a light attacker, Laith is the way to go. He has a power of 3498, which is the highest power of all the light monsters. It's actually tied with Taiga. And his life of almost 32,000 is also really darn tanky. To make things better, his trait is hardened, which means 20% of the time he won't be immobilized. And then let's just take a look at his skills. He has a light based attack that deals 80 damage on a 2-turn cooldown. He also has a light based 60 damage attack with only a 1-turn cooldown, a special based single target that deals 50 damage and applies bleeding. And if you ever find yourself going against someone extremely tanky, maybe you're facing an Horus in Team Wars, you can use this skill, which applies Reaper Countdown, which means the enemy monster will die in 3 turns. And so yeah, if you're in need of a light attacker, you really can't go wrong with Laith. And keep in mind that I did say that light monsters don't have any monster that can AoE deny, which pretty much means that in a lot of Team War scenarios, you really will need a light monster as an attacker. So for example, a Water Light War, your water monster can be the deny monster. Light and metal, metal can also be the deny monster. Light and earth, once again, earth can be the deny monster. So Laith is definitely a pretty good choice. But once again, my number one recommendation and my personal preference would have to be Demise. And with the light monsters out of the way, we can move on to metal monsters. And we start things off with Timerion, and I don't even know if I should spend time talking about Timerion, because if you don't know it by now, Timerion is the must-have monster in the whole entire game. If you have the gems, go ahead and press click and buy a Timerion. You absolutely need to have him on your team. And I guess I might as well name a few reasons why he's really good. First of all, artifact. He's not alive, it's an artifact. Status effects are useless against him. This means you can't possess him, you can't hack him, you can't freeze him, you can't stun him, you can't mega stun him, you can't apply any negative effect to him. On a defensive Timerion build, you can use Stunning Temple and Time Machine. Stunning Temple you'd want to use because it has no cooldown and it's basically an AoE daze. And then Time Machine just reduces all of the enemy's damage output by 39%. He also has a skill called Equalizer, which basically makes the enemy's health equal to that of Timerion, which for a long time was the #1 skill used to beat bosses in Adventure Map and also for Spotlight dungeons. Cooldowns deactivated makes it so you can use a skill that was recently used by another monster. Space Time makes it so your whole entire team blocks any attacks they'd receive on the following turn. If in Team Wars the rarity is common and you happen to use this skill and the common is like a level 4 and it never gets a churn in, well that pretty much means the AI is going to be attacking that common monster and it's going to be ignoring all the damage, which means it's really easy to get 3 coins. Stop Time is a single target skill that can pretty much immobilize just about every single monster with the exception of another Timerion or a Totem, and aside from applying that single immobilize, it also gives Timerion an extra churn. He can also use cooldowns activated, which basically activates the cooldown on all of the enemy monster skill set, which is the main reason Timerion can be used as the main deny monster. And then he has a skill called Loop Damage, which pretty much reflects whatever attack the enemy does against your team. And so once again, this is a must-have monster. There's so many different ways to build them, there's so many different ways to use them. You can use them on defense, on offense. This monster is just a must-have monster. Believe me when I say that. If you have the gems, go ahead and purchase this monster right now. And yes, I'm still going to talk about the other monsters because there's actually one more monster that I would recommend you guys purchase if you have the gems for it. So next up we have Annihilator R2. And so Annihilator can best be classified as an attacker. He has a power of 3575, which is the highest power for metal monsters, and it's also a really high power stat overall. It's actually the 4th highest power stat in the whole entire game. And take a look at that speed. For an attacker monster, he has the speed to rival deny monsters. Now of course you wouldn't realistically utilize that speed because a deny monster would run 3 speed runes, whereas Annihilator R2 would probably run one or 2 speed runes, but still it's an incredible speed. And check out that trait Harden. All status effects have a 20% less accuracy against it. Once again, 20% of the time he isn't going to be immobilized. And anyways, let's check out his skills. He has a metal based attack to a single target that deals 60 damage and it also magnetizes. He has a 55 damage metal based attack that also stuns. And he has a special based attack that deals 60 damage and it applies burning. And with a skill like Beam Crush, and given this monster's power and the strength runes, this is all you need to one hit the enemy monster, and even if they happen to survive, they're going to be burned, which means they're going to lose 15% of their health on the following turn. And he also has Invulnerable Punch, which is 45 damage, no cooldown, and it magnetizes. And you might be thinking this skill isn't that good, but keep in mind that if Timerion is on defense, there is a chance Timerion can do cooldowns activated against your team, which means if that was to happen, Annihilator R2 can still get a churn in, and it can set up for a future attack. And so Annihilator R2 is definitely a good metal attacker, but he is kind of outclassed by other metal attackers and by some of the deny monsters. And so we also have Arcade. And so for Arcade stats wise, he has really great stats all around, a pretty high power, a pretty tanky life, and an incredible speed. And so there's so many ways to utilize this monster. You can make him an attacker, you can make him kinda tanky, or you can give him all speedruns so he can single deny. Now unfortunately he is immune to magnetizing, which means he can easily be immobilized by someone that can stun or possess. And some notable skills for this monster include Continue, which is a 50% stamina drain that runs on a 1-turn cooldown, Triple Dragon, which is a stun skill that also runs on a 1-turn cooldown, Game Over, a special based attack that deals 60 damage, but also drains 70% of the enemy's stamina, as well as recovers 70% of your stamina, which means you pretty much never have to recharge with this monster. And if you're going with the attacker route, he has another stun skill that has a 2-turn cooldown, however deals 65 metal based damage. Or if you want to go another typical attacker setup for metal monsters, Arcade has a metal based AoE that applies Magnetize to all of the enemy monsters, and then he has a 45 metal based attack that deals 45 damage to all of the enemy monsters. So the obvious combo is that you apply Magnetize to all of the enemy monsters, and then you do your metal based AoE. So I think Arcade is definitely a fan favorite of many, but once again I think he's outclassed by other metal monsters. And so with Arcade out of the way, that just leaves the last metal monster available for purchase, which is Metalhead. And surprisingly enough, Metalhead, who has been one of the original metal monsters, is still by far one of the best metal monsters in the whole entire game. First off, stats wise, there are really amazing stats. As for his trait, he's immune to stun, which means he can't be immobilized, and stunning is one of the main immobilizing effects that many monsters tend to have, especially a lot of metal monsters. As for his skills, he has House on Fire, which applies burning and daze, and it has no cooldown. A skill like this I think should be given to Metalhead on a defensive build, so that's why I'm going to mention it here. And to take a look at some other skills, Kill Them All is an AoE stun. Paranoia is a single possession as well as it applies Nightmares. In the Darkest Hour grants Metalhead 1 extra turn, gives him a 20% mini shield, 20% life regeneration, and a 20% energy regeneration. And then some other noteworthy skills include a 60 special based attack that also grants him increased accuracy, an AoE burning attack, and a 50 damage metal based attack with no cooldown that applies Magnetized. And so Metalhead is one of those monsters that there's so many different ways to build him. You can make him for offense, you can make him for defense. Even for offense there's different skill sets. You can go the AoE stun, the AoE burn, you can use both skills, you cannot use both skills. There's just so many different ways to utilize Metalhead, and he is really one of the best monsters to use for offense as well as defense. So for example, in the Darkest Hour, the skill that grants him an extra turn, this basically makes Metalhead immune to possession, and so there's definitely some metal monsters that can possess you, such as Hackster, Mechamancer, or the Sentinel. So if the enemy's using one of those monsters on defense and then use AoE possession, it honestly doesn't matter for Metalhead. He gets an extra turn, he gets a mini shield, if he lost any life he recovers that life, and he also recovers his stamina. Then he can just use the AoE stun to mobilize all of the enemy monsters. Or heck, maybe he can just possess the enemy attacker. This also works extremely well in Magic Wars, because most magic monsters tend to run AoE possession skills. The magic monster can possess you, oh well, it doesn't matter, I can stun you next turn. And one reason you might want to consider using Metalhead instead of Timerion on defense, is just that a lot of players have figured out how to counter Timerion on defense, because for one, the AI is controlling Timerion, which means they might not do the right choice. Sometimes Timerion might just waste a stop time against like your Timerion, and then you get the turn. Or sometimes the enemy will use a Timerion that has Equalizer on defense, and then Timerion starts to game off with Equalizer, and then you're free just to kick their butt. But by using Metalhead on defense, it's a little harder to counter against that. And so Metalhead is another monster you might really want to consider purchasing. And so my number one recommendation pack would have to be Timerion, Demise, and Gothel. My second recommended pack would probably have to be Metalhead, Demise, and Gothel. And if you're in need of a light attacker, you can substitute Demise for Laith in any of those packs. Once again, as for the epic monster, I don't really think it's a necessary purchase. However, if you're already going to spend 498 gems on 2 legendaries, you might as well just spend the extra 21 gems on the epic monster. It's not really that big of a loss. You can easily recuperate those 21 gems in 2 or 3 days. And so with all that being said, that is going to conclude this video. I am really curious to hear from all of you guys. What pack or what monsters are you thinking about purchasing? I know it's extremely hard because there's so many great options, but I'm just curious, what are you guys going to do? Please be sure to let me know in the comments below, and like always, remember to dream big and pursue your passions.